Okay, I'm going to give you guys a couple seconds and then I'm going to pull this up on my YouTube account. Okay, so not really a topic that I expected to be talking about. Like, well, maybe it is in line with like my coaching, but hope you guys are having a great week. I am packing my apartment so that I can move in with my future spouse, my fiance, future spouse. So I'm packing up my apartment, and we've been doing our marriage counseling, and I've been doing therapy. And I was like, I'm going to share this information because it might help someone. And so I titled this video. Let me see what I titled it. Why are you so strong? Trigger warning, the unsanitized truth. And the reason why I call it the unsanitized truth is because I feel like I know this about myself, I do a really good job of protecting people when I tell stories and not and maybe not giving the full story out of fear of it being too much. And what I'm realizing is that my story loses its truth when I do that, right? So, people often ask me, like, oh my gosh, like you have such a strong mindset. You have, you're so ambitious, you're so whatever. And I remember I was actually on a date once and a guy said that. And I was like, that's a trauma response. Like, it is actually a trauma response to be hyper performing, hyper aware, hyper self aware, an overthinker and all of those things. They all have their wonderful qualities and they're all good things in their own right, but when together it's like a storm. So I thought, well, why don't I just tell these people the truth? Okay, I've been sneezing. Like, I'm telling you this because my nose. So I thought, why don't I just tell people the truth? And here I go again, like kind of not like dancing around the topic. I'll tell you why at the end of this video. So the first thing I want to tell you is that this personality that you see, this person that you see, was not born of like sunshine and rainbows. And it comes from a very dark place. And so I'm going to tell you about that. I'm going to tell you about that today. And I'm going to tell you also, because I don't believe in just like shaming, bashing, blaming people. I also believe in telling you how I overcame that to become who I am today. But I'm also just going to tell you the raw, honest truth that I probably haven't said out of like trying to protect the people who contributed to this, right? So I've told you guys before that I grew up in a very religious, and I don't mean that in the sense of like, oh, people read the Bible. I mean, it was culty, and in the very essence of the definition, meaning everyone talked the same, everyone dressed the same, people had, there were legalistic rules that were not in the Bible that were required for people to follow. We were at church 7 days a week, essentially, a lot of legalism, which is in Christianese means that you're taking the Bible and then creating rules that are not in the Bible as a way to say that this is how you obey God. And it is often used as a way to spiritually manipulate people and to threaten their salvation, really. So because in Christian beliefs, you are saved by grace, not by your works. But these cults or whatever, they always have some extra thing, right? It's like you have to wear these dresses or you're not a believer, or you have to act this way or you're not a believer. And that's just not what the Bible says. The Bible requires us to submit to the Lord, and then our fruit should demonstrate that, right? So I grew up in that environment, but I've never really told you guys about my home life, which was marked by lots of verbal and emotional abuse. And when I started to go to therapy when I was, oh gosh, I had to be like 25, I learned the term scapegoat. And that really helped me frame what my childhood was like. And I will just tell you, like, I was the object of a lot of rage. I was the object of like hyper criticism, um, lots of discipline, extreme discipline. I was the object of a lot of blame. And the other children, you guys know that I have 7 siblings, right? So the other children were bystanders. They would just watch and hope and pray that they were not the object of the rage, right? And so I was the scapegoat. Oftentimes my siblings, oftentimes, let me not say that. Oftentimes I was ostracized and then blamed for things, even if I didn't do them, because everybody was afraid that a certain parent would then find out and then they will become the object of the rage, right? I'm all for discipline. I think discipline is healthy. I think that children need discipline. I don't think children need to be berated and called stupid and vile names in order for that to happen, right? Like I work with, you guys know I work with athletes, I work with children. I was a teacher, and I've never seen that as a tactic that works. Like even in extreme disciplinary cases, I've never seen that as a tactic that works. But that was a lot of my childhood. I remember one specific incident. Well, I was belittled and demeaned multiple times. I couldn't even put them on one finger. But specifically, I was driving home from a basketball tournament, and I had received MVP. And I was like most parents, I think, would be like, this is so great and congratulations. But instead, it was like, don't think you're something that you don't have room for improvement just because you got this trophy. And I just remember that so vividly and thinking like, I'm actually not allowed to be good at anything. I'm not allowed to be like, I better not get too good because it will get squashed. I better not express any joy when good things happen because it might get squashed. Like that was that was a big part of my childhood as well, in addition to the scapegoating, in addition to, being the object of rage and, belittling and demeaning. That was a huge part of it. I was a highly, highly creative child. I mean, and I still am. Like, it's funny because I think that's why my soul wanted to be a teacher, because deep down, like I was like, oh, I get to do this thing that I was never, it was like sinful or something to like be creative, and I've been sort of like the crafty, arty kind of person in my family. Everyone else is very technical, very like math, STEM kind of people. That's not really my jam. And I think this will go back. Maybe I'll say that for later. But anyway, I was the highly creative one, right? So I'm left-handed and I'm very right-brained, like very much right-brained. And that was ridiculed and demeaned and belittled and beaten out of me, essentially, both physically and emotionally and, all of that verbally. And so learning to frame that as scapegoatism, if you will, really, really helped me to sort of identify what was happening, because for a long time, I walked around as an adult and as like a teen, just like wounded, like completely broken, because your family of origin has so much power over the way that you see the world and the way that you're shaped. And if you are demeaned, belittled, ridiculed by your own family, then who is safe, right? Who is safe? And so that marked most of like a lot of my childhood up until I was about like, I think 16 maybe. And, that was when I decided, even when I was applying for college, I ended up going to a university in California. I really wanted to go to a university in another state. I didn't really want to go to, I think that would have been amazing. I think that would have been a very good thing for me to do, but I couldn't. I was told that would not be paid for if I didn't. So I went to school in California. That's not really what I wanted to do, but I was terrified of going against the regime. And that is often marked in scapegoat. Like when person is a scapegoat as a child, that's also a big part of their personality too, is they're afraid to do what they really want to do. And it's not like they're trying to do bad things or sinful things. It's like, how about like, that's actually my calling and my gift. And because you're so afraid, you're squashing it. Right. So up until like 17, 18, I was just honestly full of rage, also myself, and shame and guilt and low self esteem. And because imagine if one of your parents is so disrespectful and vile and rude and belittling and breaches your boundaries as a teen. Teens do have boundaries, right? Like one of the things that I was talking to one of the parents about is, sharing children's personal information, like allowing them to, if something happens in the home, that's actually not public, that's not public business, right? For everyone to talk about. But that's a common practice in Christian culture and Christian homes and stuff. And oftentimes it was I who was the subject of all of this, right? And so, and a lot of it is because when you're a scapegoat, you also see stuff, like you see things. Typically the scapegoat is the more empathetic person the most person with the most empathy, meaning they can feel a lot of things. And that was me. I was the one who could feel I can feel it's almost overwhelming because I can see when someone's uncomfortable without them even saying anything. I can see when something bothers someone, and it's almost overwhelming because it's hard for me to do my job if I'm like constantly regulating how they're feeling. And so I've had to learn how to work through that. But the person who can see through people is often the scapegoat because everyone's afraid. It's just like that. Everyone's afraid that that person is going to ruin the dysfunctional family. They're going to expose the dysfunctional family. So that was me. I never did as a youth. I never did. I was terrified, absolutely terrified to say anything. I was absolutely terrified. And so I just kept my mouth shut and allowed myself to be the scapegoat, to be ostracized, to be made fun of, to be, ridiculed, and, to be the butt of the jokes in my own family, and when it's one sibling, it's different. When you have 7 siblings, it's a whole different ball game. And it was a challenge. It was very, very difficult. And so when I left high school to go to college, one of the things that I didn't realize I was doing, which is what therapists now call going no contact, is I essentially went no contact. I basically stopped talking to everybody. And it was a healthy thing. And I've done no contact several times in my life. And the more I do no contact, the better, the more I'm able to just kind of step outside of this situation and see what it is for what it is versus, something else. I don't know. So I went no contact and I was still wounded. I didn't know why I needed to go no contact. It just didn't feel safe or good or desirable to be in the presence of my family. And so but then there was like a weird part of me because the scapegoat has this thing where they desperately want affirmation and they desperately want to be accepted. So I would like at this, both simultaneously feel like I didn't want to be around them, but then it was like, oh, I'm missing something. Like I desperately want this family. I desperately want these people to like me. And now I'm like, screw you. I don't really care. And I genuinely had to get to a place where I was like, I don't care if you like me and I don't care if you agree with what I do. And that took a long, long time to get there. I will explain that as well. So I went to college, went no contact, kind of came in and out of that, but was still very wounded. A lot of my behaviors were hidden in shame and guilt and low self-esteem. You guys know I struggle with an eating disorder. That's also part of scapegoatism because you do not, if a parent does not allow you to regulate your emotions, you will not have emotional regulation tools, which means you will then go create maladaptive behaviors. So for me, my maladaptive behavior was an eating disorder. And I struggle with that, for probably 5 or 6 years. Up until I decided to hire life coaches and therapists to really, because I started to realize there's something wrong with me. Was in and out of relationships with like these weird guys who were like, one of them was probably had NPD, just men who were emotionally unavailable and really didn't want to be with me, but I was like clawing and begging for their attention kind of thing. And, that's all marked by scapegoatism. When you are a scapegoat, you are desperate for affirmation and desperate for love. And so I was desperate for affirmation. I was desperate for love. I was desperate for connection. And I couldn't connect with people because I hadn't healed yet. Really, I couldn't really connect with people. But I was really desperate to connect with men because, of course, if you have a dysfunctional family, you're going to struggle with like your romantic relationships, right? So I really struggled with that for a long time because I couldn't even discern what a healthy person was. So that's when I realized that I was like, oh, you have a problem. Like, you actually, Joanna, you have a problem. You need to fix this in order to really live a thriving life. So I decided to go intentional no contact. I just stopped talking to people and started to do some deep inner work. Number one, I had to acknowledge that I had a childhood that was marked by emotional and verbal abuse. I had to just say it out loud. I had to say that that's what it was. I had to grieve the childhood that I never had, that I deserved. And then I had to reparent myself. And that's where like this strength comes in, like, oh, you just don't care what other people think. Because I spent 25 years carrying what 7 people who abused me throughout my childhood thought about me, and trying to subconsciously please them with everything I did instead of trying to please God. I spent 25, 26, 27 years doing that. And some of you, this, will make zero sense because you had a different role in your family. But if you were a scapegoat, you understand this. You understand that, wow, like I'm subconsciously doing all these things so that I'm approved and the family likes me and they never will. That's not true. Some of them will. So if they've done their inner work, they will. But a lot of times it's for naught. And I had to get to the point where I was like, even if they don't change, even if they don't like me or whatever, approve of me, I still am going to do the thing anyway. And that takes a lot of strength because that took a rewiring of my brain to be like, these people literally, emotionally, and verbally abused you for 25 years. And you're really going to let them stop you from making money, living a happy life, having a thriving relationship? Stop. And I think it was really hard because it was my family. But I had to dig down, deep down somewhere inside and say, it doesn't matter. It doesn't, like that. You can either live your life how you've been living, or you can just stop caring and live a new life. And most people, truth be told, are not going to do that. I don't know, if I'm being honest, I don't know where I found the gall, the guts, the whatever to do that. I think a lot of that was no contact. I think a lot of it was me by myself. Like, I was more comfortable by myself than I was in familial settings. And so it gave me a lot, like I wasn't that person who needed to be around my family. And actually Dr. Ramani talks about this, how it takes a very special scapegoat to be able to walk away from your family and walk away from the drama and the abuse and say, not even just like now, because as adults, like no one's abusing you as an adult, but the nervous system and the neural pathways that have created that, to walk away from that as an adult and say, no, thank you. And that's what I had to do. I had to recreate my entire nervous system. And to this day, I'm still rewiring my nervous system to not be attracted to pain and chaos and abuse and dysfunction. I'm still working on that, because when it is so chaotic and when your childhood was marked by chaos, verbal, emotional abuse, like mine was, that's what you thrive on. That's what you need. And I had to train my nervous system to want peace. And that's really, really hard. I had to train my nervous system to want peace more than I wanted to be connected to a family that was dysfunctional. And I'm trying not to say you because, like, this is, when I decided that I wanted peace more than I wanted to be liked, more than I wanted to be connected to my family, who, by the way, was still, I go to family dinners and they were still in subtle ways, just trying to make sure that I was still the scapegoat. I was like, screw you. I'd rather not. I'd rather be by myself. I want peace more than I want you to like me, or more than I want to be connected to you. And as an adult, you don't have to sit in that abuse. So when I wanted that, then I could will myself to want other things, right? So I could will myself to want to, change a career, because I was like, I'm no longer doing all these things subconsciously so these people approve of me and like me when they haven't proven that they would even like me anyway. The, and there was, there's a point that I realized too that, I was making six figures. I was kempt, I was taking care of myself, and they would still find things to say, right? They would still find little ways to just attack me, right? And I thought, wow, that was the moment I realized nothing will ever be good enough for these people. Nothing. So I can let you go in love, and I can still live my life. And I get to live my life the way that I want to live it without seeking your approval. Because part of the dysfunctional family, what they try and do is they try and keep people in their dysfunctional spaces. Even if they know it's dysfunctional, they need everybody to be in their little place because it keeps the family dysfunctional. Because otherwise it blows up and then everybody knows that the family's dysfunctional. It's just so weird. It's so weird. And I was just like, thank you so much for playing this game. I'm done. I'm done. Thank you so much for playing this game. I'm out. And I chose to bow out of my own nervous system patterns. I chose to say, nope, no, thank you. I don't have to come back home and tolerate your verbal abuse. I don't have to come home and tolerate your demeaning and belittling spirit. I don't. I get to walk away, and you can talk about with me to other people, and you can go tell the people what a horrible daughter I am and how I'm running amok and all these lies to protect your image. And I stopped caring. I had to stop caring. And that's what makes someone really strong, is the ability to be like, no, thank you. Thank you so much for playing my game. You guys know something, Mario. Thank you so much for playing this game. I'm out. I will no longer be your supply. Have a nice day. And the minute you start acting up, maybe I'll come back every once in a while. And the minute they start acting up, see ya. Have a great day. Don't need ya. I have a wonderful group of friends who are like family, who are so supportive and so loving, and who have healthy boundaries. And I just said, okay, I don't need this anymore. And that's why I am the way that I am, because it's not that, I'm I'm a Black woman living in a racist white world. Like, that's part of it. But really I was the scapegoat in a very large family. And up until probably 3 years ago, I didn't even have the guts to tell people to stop. I didn't have the guts to walk away from them and say, I don't need you. So if you actually want me in your life, you better behave, because I will walk away from you and pretend like you never existed. It took a lot of strength to do that, because it's hard to be alone. Most people would rather, this is why people stay in relationships that are dysfunctional too. Most people would rather have the comfort of abuse and the comfort of dysfunction than peace, because they don't like being alone. I had to learn how to be alone and to be okay with being alone. And when you're okay with being alone, you attract other people who are healthy, because it takes a healthy person to learn how to be alone. You have to be healthy. Otherwise, you'll become maladaptive, right? You'll start doing all these weird things in your own home. And I'm not saying be a recluse and be a hermit. I think now more than ever, I crave healthy friendship. I love my friends. I love healthy communication and good conversation with healthy women. And, I'm finally, after years and years and years of therapy and inner work, finally at a place where I'm like, okay, I can date someone and choose someone from a place of empowerment versus from a place of needing and wanting connection because my childhood was marked by verbal and emotional abuse. For the first time, that's when I started dating. That's my now fiance. That's when I started dating because I finally got to a point where it's like, okay, I'm not selecting from my trauma. I'm not selecting based on a man who's going to revalidate what my siblings, what my parents said to me, multiple times over the 25 years of my life. I will not choose a man who's like that. In fact, if there's another video coming, I got to write a video on this, you guys. I was almost overwhelmed by how kind and compassionate and loving and grounded he was because my nervous system had never been around a man who was like that. Facts on facts on facts. So yeah, why are you so strong? I had to learn how to be alone. I had to learn how to detach from the emotional and physical abuse that was rampant in I keep saying physical, and that's not true. Verbal abuse, which in a lot of ways I feel like is worse because you just can't undo what people say. The emotional and verbal abuse that was rampant in my childhood. And I had to train myself to think positively about myself and to train myself to re-say things that were true. Right? Because anytime someone's calling you names or demeaning you, that usually comes from a place of, like, for me, it's from the devil. It's from the devil because God is not, God does not run around calling his children stupid and unworthy and, worthless. And he doesn't go around squashing their talents and, demeaning their gifts. He doesn't do that. So that's not of God. And, a lot of you guys know I also, like, I'm a Christian, I'm a believer. But did I have a time where I wanted to run away from God? 500%. Absolutely. Absolutely. But what I realized is that God is not people and people is not God. And that's really a thing. God's not going to ask me on the last day if I'm like what I thought about other people. He's going to ask me what I did. Right. And so I don't think it helped my case. I don't think it helped to be a scapegoat, but I think it just, I mean, God is God, and God in his sovereignty and mercy was like, and I'm still going to show you what a loving and holy and merciful God I am, and I'm still going to wrap my arms around you. And I think also I know that I would not have been able to do this without the grace of God, because when you decide as a member of a dysfunctional family to separate, it really is you and God until you find your tribe. And so I do think that it was by the grace of God that I was able to just be alone for a really long time and be okay with it. And, I would journal and write these really long prayers to God, and I would just listen to worship music all day, and I would pray. And it was really and I would go to church by myself, and I would just be, just me and God, because I realized, yeah, they're not going to change. And, one of my life coaches is really funny. She always says this, and it kind of helps me create this distance, right? She goes, your parents were two random people selected by God, two random people who knew how to have a baby. They didn't necessarily know how to parent. And that's true. And I don't think I will know how to parent, right? Like, I don't think there's any perfect parent out there. And so that just is what it is. But what I'm not going to do is squash my child's dreams and verbally and emotionally abuse them and, tell them what worthlessness they are in so many words. I'm not going to do that. I hope and pray by the grace of God that I am someone who builds my children up, someone who listens to my children, and I didn't say obey. It's a different thing. Listens to my children and hears them and lets them be who they are. Like, what gifts and talents did God give you, and how can you use those to glorify him, versus I'm so scared and so terrified of everything. So I'm just going to call everything evil, stupid, and bad, including you as a person. Yeah, no, not doing that. We're not doing that over here. So that's actually where my strength comes in. I don't know who else is watching. I hope you guys can hear me. Can someone leave a comment if you can hear me? I can't see the comments over here. Leave a comment. Anyway, so last thing I'm going to say is that, like, this was not manufactured, right? This did not come out of nowhere. This did not come out of thin air. And I think someone else, I was listening to a different podcast, and someone said that a lot of times people who are hyper successful and hyper, whatever, it's born of trauma. And, I don't think that means that you have to be traumatized in order to be successful, in order to be, strong-willed and all that other stuff. But know that this did not come from like me just willing myself to do it necessarily, but it came from a very deep, dark place where I had to transform my entire thought process, and I had to be willing to be alone. And a lot. I'm sorry. So I was getting a phone call because I totally forgot to put this on mute. Anyway, you guys, that's it for the video. I just wanted to share this with you guys so that you could just understand that if you were in this situation, it's possible to like overcome it. It's possible. It's going to take a lot of work, but you'll be okay. And I just want you to know that you don't have to hate people. You don't have to, you don't have to have hatred in your heart. You can just recognize that it is what it is and move on from it. It does take acknowledgement, though. You do have to acknowledge that it's existing and what happened. And then you just move forward from there. You transmute it. And I was literally telling my fiance the other day, I have just resigned to the fact that my role is to, like, I'm the disruptor, right? Because the scapegoat is often the disruptor. And I'm okay with that. I'm the disruptor. I do what everybody really wants to do. And I get all the backlash and ridicule and, all the make fun of it, right? And then they all go do it because that's what they really wanted to do. And I literally tell him that all the time, like, because he'll get upset sometimes. And I'm like, no, like, this is my role. This is my job. That's how I transmuted this, is that this is my job. I am the disruptor. I do things that people really want to do, but they're afraid to do it because they don't want to disrupt the system. I'll do it. I'll do it. Whatever. I know that this is what you guys all want. And I'm like, okay. And I'm okay with it because I can handle now. I'm like, okay, let me be the one to take on the ridicule and the whatever. And then you guys go ahead, a year later and go do the same thing. You're welcome. And I've accepted that role in my family. So anyway, y'all, I'm going to come off this conversation. If you liked this live, please leave a like. Please leave a comment if you can relate to this at all in any way, shape, or form. And if you want more commentary like this, please do not hesitate to let me know and I'll try. Otherwise, I'm going to get back to packing and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.